Hey, today I'm just going to go through some of the things that you should take to your job interview. So, one of the things that I often get asked about is what sort of stuff should I take along to the interview with me, particularly sort of document. I think it's really important to take along with you a bit of a portfolio of some of your work and your experience, things that you can sort of use as facts or stuff that might be interest to the panel. So I actually pulled out my portfolios for the various job interviews that I've done over the last several years, and I thought it'd be interesting if we just go through these. I've actually got three portfolio binders here, so please don't be put off by this. This is, decades of various job applications. What I've generally done as a process is actually I've got one that I take with me, and then I sort of transfer all the contents from others into secondary binders, just so I've still got them in case there might be something in there that I might want to put back into the next job interview. So I'm really only recommending that you need one portfolio binder, and this is kind of like a display binder. You can get these quite cheaply for a few dollars at Officeworks in Australia. I guess that'd be something like Office Depot in North America, something like that. I'm not sure what the equivalent would be in, say, the UK, but I'm sure you've got some sort of office supplies chain there. And they're quite handy because they, you can flip through, you can flick through. They've got these plastic sleeves. I like the ones where you can just rip them out, and then, can you see that? You can sort of just stick them back in. So you can kind of pull things out and refer to them, hand them off to people, that sort of stuff, and quickly flick through and find what you're looking for. So we'll go have a look at what's in this, and I'll take you through some of the contents. Okay, so this is the current day binder that I most recently used for my last proper job interview, and I've actually added a couple more things since then, but I thought we'd sort of go through this and start with that, and then we might have a look at the other ones that I have from sort of which are a bit of a record of other things that I've collected. So if we flick over, you can see here, first thing in this particular binder was actually the position description for the last job that I had to interview for, and I'm glad that I can show that I practice what I preach, because one thing you'll notice here is, if you can see that, on the back page we've got all the selection criteria, and it's quite handy to print out the selection criteria actually for the interview, because it's useful to refer to in the interview. It can kind of give you a bit of a gauge as to what the question that you're being asked is about, because you can they should be using the selection criteria to generate the question, and then you can sort of go into a little bit more depth, and that might help you to relate to some of the answers that you've perhaps put into the application already. Another advanced tip that I would point out with the selection criteria is we talk a lot about the fact that there are certain questions that are discriminatory, which are essentially illegal and shouldn't be asked in the interview, but they do get asked. And I think one way of sort of deflecting when that does occur, because I think that's the best way to handle it on the moment, is to, again, refer to the selection criteria. So, for example, if you get asked about your plans to complete training, or, are there any sort of family reasons why it would be hard for you to undertake the position, or something like that, which is really off limits, you can sort of say, look, I've just got the selection criteria here. I'm just wondering whether you can just help me out and sort of guide me as to what criteria that question is addressing, and that might sort of be a way of kind of non-confrontationally deflecting that sort of approach. So there's just a thought there as well. So position description is the first thing there that I've got. The next thing is a copy of my CV. So this is a little old. You can see this kind of a composite of myself. I've got a capability summary there, which is a little slightly different to a career goal summary. summary of my skills and experience, my key education, my current position, etc. So took that along with me in case I needed to refer to it, and also if the panel wanted to look at it. And then the next few things in this one are kind of things that kind of evidence that I wanted to use. So the job I was going for, it was an education training job. So I put some things in about some of the things I'd achieved in terms of education training. So here's like this is actually a summary of some accreditation standards that I sort of sponsored, getting reviewed when I was in a previous role that was involved in pre-vocational accreditation at the Health Education Training Institute. So there's sort of something I could point to in terms of things I've done around governance and improvement around education. Another thing I've added in here is a project that I was actually successful in my business in tendering for with the College of Physicians. So, you know, so again, something where I can show that this is quite a big, if you can see that, there's quite a lot of stuff in detail that went into that tender and that proposal, so sort of demonstrate that I can put together a good set of documentations that can win a tender and a project. On the flip side of that, I've got an article that I contributed to. So the project was about selection into training, and I've got an article that I contributed to that was in that area, a review article through the best evidence medical education process, which is kind of like the Cochrane of medical education, I guess. So I was the fifth author on that particular systematic review, so that's something that I could refer to as well in terms of my research in medical education training. Another thing here, which is kind of a printout of a website that I designed for final year trainees, which gives a bit of a syllabus and a guide to how they should go about learning through their rotation. An award that I won for teaching last year with my local university, so to show that I can contribute to high quality teaching outputs. Another certificate of professional development in terms of education. A thank you letter for my teaching contribution from a program. Another letter from an international group which is organised by the college in Canada, just thanking for my participation in another medical education program. Another thank you letter for contributing to a training program. And also, so lots of evidence and sort of things that I could point to if I wanted an example, depending on what the questions might be around, I guess. This is a working with children check. I've got a certified copy here of my 100 points ID. Some of that will be blurred out, but just, and then a tax form as well, because often they want a tax file number declaration. So no medical degree in there or registration. That would be something else that you probably should have a copy of in there. No immunisation record. Again, you should probably take that along with you. Didn't really need a map because this is a place that I'm quite familiar with. But yeah, so that's kind of the contents of the most recent day binder that I took with me for my most recent job interview. So you can see these are, you can slip this into a briefcase or a reasonable sized bag and then sort of bring it out and put it on the desk in front of you and sort of maybe to the side, and then as needed, if there was something came up, you could sort of say, look, well, actually I did a project recently with the College of Physicians, and I can show you the process that I went through there. So that's the current one. We'll put that over to the side there. I might just have a flick through other ones here. So this is the next most recent one. So this one I prepared when I was going for my job at the Health Education Training Institute. So you can see here I did actually print out a map of the site so I knew where I was going. So that was sort of a handy practical thing. I print out an organisational chart because the role was an executive role, and so it's when you're applying for sort of executive jobs, it's good to know and good to be able to show that you know who the other people in that organisation, that tier 2 of the organisation, will be and what they're responsible for. And it was also helpful for me to discuss in the interview some of my thoughts about the current structure, because this was a job that was kind of, you know, a new job, a new reborn organisation, and they were going through a phase of rebuilding, and not everything was set in stone. So I was able to sort of talk about what I saw in that chart and what I saw that was good, and maybe things that I saw that might be missing that they might want to think about in terms of who they were looking for in executive positions and who had responsibility for what. Again, this is a terms of reference that I was helped set up in terms of some governance around education. So I thought they'd be useful for me to show. Something about a program that I developed around workforce. This was like a key reference document that they asked me to look at. What else have we got? Yep, again, so a CV. That was bravely a LinkedIn printout by the looks of it. So that can work for you, although I think I did some modifications to it to make it look a little nicer. Again, a review article which I thought was appropriate to discuss in relation to the role. This was about the Cochrane Review in terms of interprofessional education. My accreditation status as a supervisor, another certificate of CPD for the college. Here again, so this is my medical registration that I brought along with me. Some other sort of references. Another copy of my registration. This is my, I probably should put this in my current one actually. This is my certificate that shows that I'm a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors, which is a great course. I'd highly recommend that for anyone who's sort of heading into medical management, executive levels. You know, even if you don't end up sitting around a board table, you probably will be doing things that are reporting to a board, and that's a very good course to do. Another reference from the Faculty of Health. This is interesting. This is an award I got from the Association and relatives and friends of the mentally ill for something I did some time ago, but I was actually quite chuffed to get that. You know, to be recognised by your peers is one thing, but to actually be recognised by patients and supporters of patients and families and consumer representatives is, I think, a whole different level, and for me sort of made me feel like maybe I am doing something right in my practice. I believe that's a card from a child that I once saw that wanted to thank me in child psychiatry for helping them. I won't show you that one. There was a thank you letter from the Minister of Health for doing something, being on a postgraduate medical council. Another sort of certificate of attendance in terms of my teaching on the run. A few other sort of things like that. Various achievement awards, courses that I've done, etc., etc. Disaster response training. You get to do quite a few things when you take on leadership roles in health. And then, so that was like the second most recent time I went through all this process. So let's just look at the last one. This has probably got quite a lot of old stuff in it. So we've got term evaluation forms. These look a lot different to what they currently do now in Australia. My certificate of achieving residency, which you needed at that time from the Canberra Hospital to get your general registration to pass through internship, certificate of unconditional registration. So this is all starting to get a bit old. Again, we've got a CV, so I'm at least being quite consistent there. Report from my job. This would have been when I probably applied for a resident position in Hunter, New England, in Newcastle. Actually, maybe it was just when I went for my trainee position, or maybe I think what I've done is then collected more stuff in relation to my psychiatry training. So these are sort of things that show that I've completed certain things for the College of Psychiatry. So I was probably anticipating this would then be useful for going for consultant positions. What else? More college stuff. Blank page there. Briefing I wrote, I don't know who for. A media article I was involved in at one point, and I was a little bit more bolshy in my youth. Another one. An inquiry, actually, I forgot about that. I actually spoke at a parliamentary inquiry once about, I think, medical workforce concerns. It's the Parliament of New South Wales there, Legislative Council. Some sort of protocol I was involved in designing as a registrar. So you get these opportunities, people to ask about, what can I do in terms of quality improvement to put on my CV? So often they're looking for people to sit on a committee to sort of redesign something. So if you can do that, there's often some sort of document you can like print out at the end of it, like a policy. In this case, there's a nice flow chart. You can kind of say, well, look, I was involved in working that one out, actually. This is a handbook I wrote. It's quite thick, that one. Guide for managers when I wasn't a manager, so when I was a registrar. This was to help managers understand about the difference between interns, residents and registrars, or especially trainees. Vaccination records, some other training stuff. It goes back a bit. Or defibrillation course. Oh, completed a young manager program at the I don't think this exists, the Institute of Administration anymore. That was through the University of New South Wales and Sydney at the time. They could buy me on that. Safety improvement training, another CV. What else? Some more CPD stuff. Appointment under the Mental Health Act as appointment as a director of a healthcare agency under the Mental Health Act. Another title, you'd think it'd be hard to get those, but actually they're pretty easy. It's usually the last person standing. Something I was involved in terms of reviewing privileges for psychiatry, etc. So you can kind of see some of the things that I've collected there over the years. Probably between the three of them, got the sort of things that 1, 2, 3 that I would generally recommend that you would want to include when you're going for like a resident or trainee level job. So there you have it. That's what I put in my portfolio binder when I go for a job interview. As I say, I think some of the key things that you want to think about taking with you are a copy of the job application, particularly the selection criteria. That's quite good to be able to refer to that. Some CV copies of your medical degrees, registration, that sort of thing. Maybe even your academic transcript. Things that they ask you for, so like working with children checks, vaccination records, that sort of thing. If you're not familiar with the location, a map, the details of the appointment as well, in case, again, you're not familiar with the location, you need to call someone because you're a bit lost. And then things that will be useful for you to refer to in the interview. So whether that be referee reports, term evaluations that show you in a positive light, papers that you've published, other pieces of work that you've been involved with, things that you can actually just flick to and actually show the panel, yep, look, I actually did this. I'm not just talking about it. Here it is. Here's the evidence in a printed form. So think about picking up one of those display binders and getting yourself a portfolio for the interview. Just a quick word about the channel. We're really hugely thankful to all those of you who've signed up to Career Doctor. We're now well over 150 subscribers. We're really wanting to focus in the goal of 1,000 subscribers. I'd like to try and hit that if possible by the end of this year. So I know that many of you are watching these videos because you want to get a bit of an edge in your job application process and your interview process. And I get that. So, you may not want to tell other people about the channel, but can I suggest once you've gone through the process and maybe once you've got that job, maybe tell your friends, tell those people that you work with, your junior colleagues, etc. Spread the word a little bit. We'd really like to see as many people benefit from this sort of advice and information. Question of the day, do you think it's important to take some documents with you to the interview? What sort of things do you take along with you? How do you take them with you? Do you keep them in a safe place so that you might be able to refer to them easily at your next interview? Comment below, let us know about that question. Also, give us some feedback on some of the other things that you'd like us to be talking about in terms of career advice and support for doctors. Thank you and have a nice day, and look forward to seeing you again in another video.